Oh yeah, we're early today. Check me out. What's up, y'all? How you doing? Kenneth, yo, what's up, man? Jonathan, what's up, dude? Hope your Achilles is doing okay. Guess that was an issue. Oh boy, it's always a name I can't pronounce. Gala, awesome. Stocher member. Get it in while you can. Episodes number 4 through 5 are live and out, and episode number 6 will be dropping shortly. For those of you guys that don't know, we have a guest coming on today. Lode is his name. And he's got kind of an interesting story. We'll go through it with you guys here. This is new for me. Oh, snap. I'm all nervous. It's like a first date. This is the first person that I brought on a podcast that I haven't actually met before in person, in at least like a passing conversation. Because I would say, like, I barely met Savon when I drove to his house and had him on my podcast as like, wasn't my first guest ever, but like the first kind of like known guest. Don't be nervous. That's like when you're climbing something and they're like, don't look down. And then you look down and you freak out. No, we're all right. I always find that like if I'm not prepared, then I'm definitely getting nervous. But the more I prepare, not as bad. Not acting like I'm not, but you know what I'm saying. So I'm gonna be out in CrossFit Mayhem on Friday. I arrive Friday evening. I'm gonna be hanging out Saturday all day, and then I fly right back home on Sunday. I'm gonna go out there and politic a little bit. You know what I mean? Shake hands, kiss babies, say what's up to Standy, high five a few friends, cement my relationship with Rich. But it should be a good time. I'm stoked. Bryson will be out there. Taylor will be out there. JR will be out there. Hiller, I'm sure, will be there as well. So Jenny will be there capturing some content at our first event as the Jenny Dense Updates. So that'll be exciting. And we'll have some fun. We're going to try some new stuff with some content on YouTube. We're just going to treat YouTube shorts as just like quick updates, live, some stuff not live, like just like depending. So it'll be an interesting experiment. We've been advised against it because they were like, that's not what YouTube is for. It's long form, but it's all right. We'll try. You have to experiment. So we'll be out there doing that. I'll capture some stuff for you guys. We'll have a good time. I don't know. We're just going to have a good time with it. Hold on. Let me send the thing I thought he had in the description, but possibly not. I got a shout out in the week of review. That was kind of cool. Sorry, it was in the description of the calendar invite. All right, getting that situated. Well, I'm hoping to be out there with my scooter and boot. No, well, if you're out there, dude, I'll buy you a couple coffees. I owe you. You were taking good care of me at Crash. And this will be the first event that I go to that I'm not like in charge of 100 things or a stream or like under some really high pressure situation. So I'm looking forward to it because it's going to be much more relaxed for me, hopefully. And I could just kind of enjoy it a little bit more. So if you guys are out there, Mayhem Classic, come say what's up. The next piece quickly here, we're just going to go through a couple comments from last week's show. For those of you guys that don't watch it live, but you still want to comment and participate, I got you. We're going to bring it up here. If I could do the right screen and shift. Okay, cool. So first one here. Jiminity Jabubu. Thank you for your contribution. It doesn't matter who buys CrossFit or it doesn't matter who buys or owns CrossFit. If you don't have HQ in media to build the casual fans and the diehard community interest, the games in join affiliates, HQ media team, and their ability to connect the athlete to the fan, promote the games, drive new audiences, pre-existing fans, interest in watching the games, joining a box, being part of a community, blah, blah, blah. All the stuff that built CrossFit in its prime in 2010 to 2014. Until CrossFit can recreate and implement the same formula they did back then, it will continue to fall apart or worse than it already is, or at most stagnate, never go from anywhere at all. Yeah, I think that the first deal is you got to really understand that fitness is a media and marketing business. It really starts there, and the evidence is quite apparent. If you look back at the history of CrossFit, and you guys hear this, we beat this drum all the time. But you have to show the media, you have to inspire people, and it has to be constant, whether it's with athletes, whether it's with changing people's lives in terms of weight loss or, reversing diseases, whatever the case may be, or just curing their loneliness. You know what I mean? Maybe that's one too. Uh, but if you show that all the time and you're inspiring new people and you're getting better and partners in the space to continue that message, that's how you grow it. If you got to focus on the media and the marketing first. Okay. Oh, our good old friend Frank. Let me know when you want to have me on as a guest. I would love to hear your reasons why affiliates can't collectively buy CrossFit and explain to you the difference between a board made up of private equity and a board of affiliate owners elected by all of the affiliates who own the company. Okay. So all as I imagine is a bureaucracy nightmare. And I want to make sure this is clear. If all of us put in money, let's say everybody here in the chat, this is the largest group I have ever had, all 18 of us. So let's say we all throw $100 into the bucket. Okay. So we're all equal players and we all buy a seat on the board here and we all have voting rights and what have you. What happens if half the group says, I agree with Matt, we're going to make a heavy investment into media marketing? And what happens if the other group says, no, that's really stupid, we're going to invest in technology and SEO? If everybody's like equal through there, then who decides that? Now you're going to say, well, we could just elect board members and other people have more voting. Then all of a sudden you're no longer running a company. You're running like a political nightmare and you're trying to navigate through all of that. You would see a massive divide in affiliates in terms of what they think their needs are and what they think the role of HQ is. And if you had everybody at the board there and tried to do that, I just imagine you would spend majority of your time spinning your wheels in the dirt of the internal politics of trying to figure out what decisions to make, or worse, you start electing leaders and now you have these power sucks and different things happening. And by power suck, I mean somebody who wants to be the head of it to call the shots. Somebody's going to be gunning for them. There'll be other people that don't agree. And you start to have all of that. Now, if you have a company or it's a single owner, you don't have to worry a ton about that. Or if you have a private equity with a few managing board people, they're all interests are aligned in terms of selling the company, adding value, selling the company. So that's what I think. I don't know. Prove me wrong. Maybe I don't know. Oh, this was a good comment. I thumbs down it. Well, that's an hour I won't get back. I replied, I'll refund you. Can't cost that much, which is true. The Clooney's Adventures, great show, Souza. How many non-affiliated gyms do you think are out there and how profitable do you think they are? Are the most profitable gyms outside of affiliation? Whoever buys CrossFit will inherit all the current negative sentiment around. The community is growing tired and won't take long to turn new owners. So it won't take too long to turn on the new owners, meaning dislike them. Here's the deal. That's what Chris Cooper was saying, is that the problem is the gyms aren't profitable enough to create a really strong ecosystem. And part of the role he believes from HQ should be contributing to that ecosystem by teaching them how to be business owners. Like that would be the role of HQ, or at least point them in the right direction and all this other stuff. Sweet. It's coming now. Okay. It'd have been funny if I had a complete no-show on it. So that's where I believe the problem lies, is that a lot of these gym owners are great coaches, awesome people, committed to the mission, but a lot of them struggle, whether it's because they have a 9 to 5 or whether it's because they lack certain skills or time in the business realm. And something I talk about with coaches all the time is, hey, the ascension necessarily isn't owning a gym, because your whole job switches. So if you want to be a business owner and you want to be an entrepreneur, then you go from coach to gym owner. If you want to coach and your passion is coaching and you want to develop more coaches and you want to be on the floor and with your members and all of this stuff and writing programming and really digging in there, then you want to be a coach. And in which case you got to find a really good affiliate owner to partner with. So I'm not saying you still can't have a small piece of ownership, but you definitely need somebody who wants to run a business to partner with. Otherwise, your job completely changes and you find yourself less and less on the floor. Or when you are coaching on the floor, you just feel like, holy shit, this is just going around in circles and I just feel like I'm never growing this business. And then on top of that, how do I even pull myself out? It just becomes this cycle of death. And I think that's what a lot of affiliate owners are experimenting now, or experiencing, not experimenting. Okay, so last one here, Sprinter Type 90. This was an interesting comment. So he put, hey all, in case anybody is wondering, I'm a level 2 and a longtime CrossFitter, and I actually work at Moelis. Moelis & Company, you guys remember, is the major bank that is handling the sale of CrossFit, the acquisition. So this guy works at Moelis. I lost my spot there. And I actually work at Moelis. I don't work in investment banking. I do accounting and finance, and therefore I'm not advising on this deal. I did, however, reach out to the deal team to let them know that I'm happy to help if any of my knowledge could be of use to them. After speaking with them, I'm just going to say they have absolutely done their homework. I have a sense that they're have a very good grasp on what our community is and what it stands for. So just that I'd offer that. I don't buy it. That guy's a plant. No way that's actually true. Oh my gosh. Kai. Hi, sir.
What's up? Can you hear me?
I can. Yeah. How you doing?
I'm doing very good. How are you?
I'm great. We were just doing a little comment section. Got to go through all of those. And a little bit about this show is, I don't know if you looked into it at all, but the audience here, all of us CrossFitters, we're CrossFitters. So there's a big sale of CrossFit potentially happening right now.
Okay.
For sure. And so we were covering it a little bit here.
Yeah. So the interesting thing I've heard about CrossFit is that technically it's more functional fitness, because there's the one person that has the trademark to the word CrossFit, and then everything that is CrossFit is technically labeled incorrectly, or it's liable to what he's doing. Because I have a friend in Norway that does, they have a brand, a clothing brand is like in the CrossFit or functional fitness space.
Yeah.
He was telling me in terms of like legality and like what you can or can't call it. It's a lot of it's functional fitness, as they say.
Though that's how you skirt it, right? But as CrossFit, has completely changed the landscape of the fitness industry. And I've owned a CrossFit gym for 12 years, so I've seen it change a lot over the years. And it's interesting always somebody's outside perspective. Have you ever tried CrossFit by any chance? I know you work out.
I've done it once, and I ended up puking because I had eaten right before, and I went with my buddy, and he's actually worked with Patrick back in the early days, and his name is Jeff. They went to the military together, and I had to work out with him, and I was like, all right, fuck it, you're an old man. I was giving him crap, and I was like, come on, like, it can't be that bad. And I had just eaten like a big ham and cheese sandwich prior, and I was like keeping up with him, and then I was like, yeah, I can't hold it down. So no, it was good. But both I have 4 siblings, and like 3 of them have been doing a lot of CrossFit, and they love it.
No shit. Are they still in Norway?
They're still in Norway, yeah.
Yeah. So you have 1 brother, 3 sisters?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. So so I guess we'll just transition real quickly, because I want to know, like, you've toggled back and forth between the States and Norway for some time. In fact, you're one of have to be very few people that have graduated high school in 2 countries. Is that correct?
That is very correct. Yeah. No, I graduated in Norway, or I graduated in the States, and then in Norway they have 1 more year of high school, so I had to go back to high school. So when everyone was like, "Oh, I got accepted to this college," I'm like, "I hope my high school lets me back in." And newsflash, they didn't, so I had to go to a different school. But that's a different story.
No shit. So you couldn't go back to the one you went. So did you have to go back and plead your case and be like, "Hey, I've actually this far along and I've already graduated"?
No,
were you at the time? Go ahead.
No, I was. Yeah, I was. So in Norway, you reapply for high school. So like, just because you were let in the first year, if your grades are bad, you have to like reapply. And I want to say like 90% of the time, you always get let in, because you have like some sort of favor that you went to the school, but it's not a given like for anyone. So what happened was, I went abroad, and at that point they were like, as long as you get into the second year, which was my American senior year of high school, and as long as you get in that year, you're good, and then you'll be fine. And I was like, all right, dope, okay. And then I got in, and it wasn't an issue. And like, you just don't say thank you to the place because you go abroad. So it's kind of like you're leaving the school for a year, and then you come back, and as long as you take the right classes, you're good. But I didn't, and I want to say the lowest person that was let in had like a 3.9 GPA of all the other students as well that left the country that year. So I was more of like a B student. So for me, I was like, okay, like sayonara. This isn't gonna work.
Yeah, I would have been completely fucked. I was more like a C- student myself. Hey, so where did you come to the States the first time you were out? Were you in LA at that time?
Yeah, I lived in Orange County, so south of LA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And how was that different from Norway? Was that your first experience with the States? Did you just say
No,
screw it and
because I grew up. So I grew up in I grew up. My mom's American, so I grew up spending most of the summer, pretty much every summer in the States. And
got
at
it?
that point, it was like I was pretty used to it. But from a cultural standpoint, obviously, it's pretty different. You're like acclimating to American friends. I think the biggest challenge I had initially was the component of you're going to school and you meet people senior year that have been friends since like kindergarten, and it's kind of like, oh, I'm the new kid on the block. So
Yeah.
it created for a little bit of a challenge, but I mean, it worked out. I met a lot of people that I still stay in touch with today. So all in all, it was a great experience. And then the weird thing was when you go back, it's like I went on this random side quest where like I started a whole new life, and I come back a year later and it's like, oh, she broke up with him and they're dating now, and what else is new?
Right.
It's almost like you go into the closet in Narnia, and you're like in Narnia and you're on this wild adventure living this crazy life, and then suddenly you come back and it's like, oh, 10 minutes passed, like what happened?
Right, and it's all shifted around though, and their all
Yeah,
lives continued to move on. And
yeah,
what was the dynamic like? Are your brothers and sisters the same as you? Because as I was kind of like digging around doing my research, you seem very much on the go, very adventurous. Like you've traveled
yeah.
Europe, the States.
Yeah, no, absolutely. South America. No, I've chosen a little bit of a different path, probably like the more untraditional path, if you want to call it that. I have four other siblings, two older, two younger. Three of them or two of them are doctors. One's in med school, and the second one is like on track to be an engineer. So definitely the black sheep in the family, if you want to put it that way. But I think they were great athletes. They were good. They were all mostly good at school, so like they kind of went more with the traditional path in a sense, and then I kind of blazed the less wandered trail for sure.
And how was that with your parents? Stuff were they like supportive of it, or was it always like, why can't you be more like your sisters?
No, no, it's interesting because we always half joke, like the family always half jokes that like I'm the one with the least education doing these crazy things, and I'm probably going to make more than all of them combined, right? Where it's like I'm taking the more risky route in a sense, although they're doctors and like I mean they have great lives, they have boyfriends and girlfriends, and my sister just got engaged now like last month, so like they're all settled in the right track. But I think the I knew early on, like, so I'm dyslexic. Like, I didn't realize, or they didn't label it or catch it till fourth grade.
Oh,
So, for
dude,
instance,
me too. And we didn't catch it until the people in the comment section told me about it.
oh, nice,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've been diagnosed like about a year ago
Shout
when
out the
I
internet. Shout out the internet. No, so it's funny because I didn't like. I mean, I couldn't read if my life depended on it. But if it stuck, I'd memorize it. Like it was like okay, done. Like I have a friend that always goes and he's like, bro, like I'll be like, yo, you remember that person from like 9 years ago? Their name is this, and their uncle's name is this. He was like, no, I'm normal. Like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, I don't. I was like, bro, okay, like, let me backtrack for you, give you some context. But no, so like, reading was always difficult. I had a very good memory. So like, as soon as it stuck, like, I read it once. I went through the chapter for the test, read it once, and it stuck. And like, I could coast by with B's or A's pretty easily. But I'd say up until I decided to drop out. I was kind of still in the main track for education and college and kind of you name it. But at that age, I'd started kind of through the path of self development. I'd started learning and like figuring out, oh, you know what, like I want to start a business. I don't know what type of business, but like I want to move in that direction. That's where wealth is made. And like a lot of the people I read about in history, it's like you're doing things that aren't necessarily the standard path. So it was never really an issue. I'd say the only time it was a little bit of a challenge, or like it was more, it created a little bit friction, was when I got the job offer, left school. Now that wasn't really an issue because it was like, hey, I'm going to take a semester off and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, was that your first, like, did you have a job before that? Like, did you work at a local, like, coffee shop or
Yeah,
whatever,
I worked.
stole
I
some
worked
weed
in
at high
I worked
school?
in a distribution center for a warehouse. So like
Okay.
we would wherever it was Norway's biggest like conglomeration of food, if you want to put it that way. So what it was is I drove a truck in a warehouse and I basically just lined up all the stuff that you send to your Target or Walmart or whatever.
Yeah.
I did that on the weekends, and then I did a gap year where I was doing that. But Valuetainment was like my proper job in a sense, if you want to call it that.
Okay. And so when you were, you went to, were you going to college at that point when you first flew out to Dallas to go meet him?
Yeah, so I took a I'll give you I'll give you the full story. So I was looking at school. I was looking so I graduated the US in June of 2016. I was class of 16. Then in 2017, or like going into 17, 18, or I guess it's 16, 17. Yeah, like the following year, I took my year in high school. So then in Norway, I graduated class of 17. And then the class of 18 or that year afterwards, I took off. Like I took it as a gap year, which is pretty traditional or like normal thing in Europe, where you're like, oh, you know what? I'm not ready to like jump into another 12 years of school or whatever. Like I'll work, I'll go travel, I'll do some kind of exploration. And in many cases, what people do during this
I
time.
lost your camera. I lost your camera.
Yeah, let me see here what's going on. But in many cases, what happens is people go to Europe and they will go ahead and are you seeing it? No, this is interesting. Technology,
right.
man. What can I say?
Take your time.
So in Norway, what they do is during this time is they go ahead and travel or they go to the military because Norway has like a military. Okay, let me see. Just adjust this. In Norway, they have. There we go.
Nice.
So in Norway, they have a year afterwards where it's basically like everyone goes into the military. So at that point, or most eligible males do, and like you can get out of it if you want, and this, not the other. But it's kind of like the year after high school is essentially known as like a year where you're not going straight to school. Mm-hmm. So what I ended up doing was I was working part time. I was a substitute teacher. I was doing the warehouse. And then in the spring, I traveled. And at that point, during this whole process, I'm looking at schools in the US because I'm like, okay, I guess next step is schools. And I was very dead set on, I'm either going to go to school on the East Coast or the West Coast and nowhere in between. And then you're looking at like Boston, New York, San Francisco, DC, like you name it, the most expensive cities in the country, let alone educational costs that are through the roof. So at that point, I was like, And I'd been watching Patrick Bet-David, Tom Bilyeu, Grant Cardone, Gary Vee, like a lot of these people that were big at the time. Yep. And I reached out to all of them and I sent them a message where I was like, hey, based on XYZ situation, does this still make sense? And I was basically trying to get an understanding of like, is school worth it? Like, do you need it? Do you not need it? If I knew exactly what I'd do, I'd just go do it. But I'm kind of like in this weird stage where I don't know it, but I want to go in that direction. Yeah. So what happened was I sent the LinkedIn messages. Patrick responded. He's like, hey, I actually wrote a book about this, Drop Out, Get Schooled. So I was like, okay, cool. I bought the book, read the book. And then in the book, there's a quiz where it's like from 1 to 5, stay in school, 5 to 10, drop out. And I go, yo, Pat, I got 5. Like, you're not really helping me here, buddy. Like, what do we like? What should I do?
Right.
Yeah, I was like, this is exactly where I started and why I'm here. But ultimately, I was like, these are the things I do. These are the things I don't do. And then we kept talking, and like it was a message over LinkedIn here and there, and like a week would go by, and I'd get a response, and then like we kind of go back. But ultimately, it was a couple months, the whole exchange, and then it ended with me basically setting it up to where it was. Hey, all right, like you said all these things, you don't need education, you don't need this, you don't need this, you don't need this. Give a brother a shot. Like, let's see about it. Like, talk the talk. So you almost,
you kind of made him put his money where his mouth was, right?
Now, yeah, in a sense.
Now the strategy, because I was looking at something. So you basically like signed up for something with LinkedIn, and they gave you like a free email or something that would go to that inbox. So
yeah,
was the strategy of how you were able to get the attention of them?
I mean, I wouldn't call it like it was just I signed up for like the LinkedIn Pro for a month, and then you had a 7-day trial, and you got I think it's like an in message or whatever it's called, which typically you have to pay for. But you had X amount that you could send, and then once you send it and they accept it, and the conversation starts, at that point, like you're good. So
right, it'll keep populating at top of your inbox. Okay,
yeah, so that's what I kept doing.
So you kept shooting messages back and forth, and then you kind of made him put his money where his mouth is, and you were like, all right, well, I'm in between. Then like, what's up? Let me get a shot, get a meeting. And was there anything else around that? Like did you set it up for something specific? Like, did you think like, okay, now what am I going to ask this guy as a meeting for? Or like, what the hell am I going to talk to him about? Like, how did you figure that out?
Before that, The story was in say like January, February of 2018. We're trying to figure out like, okay, cool. I'm supposed to do an internship or like a summer job over the summer, right? So I get a confirmation in like February, March. Hey, okay, cool. Like, let's test it out. Let's see. And then I'm like, awesome, right? And then time goes by, and I'm like, okay, like, when do I start? What are the technical details? Like, what are we looking at? Because I need to book flights, figure out where I'm going to stay, and like get myself situated. So what ended up happening was a month went by, and then like no answer, and then I kept following up, and then it was like, you know what? Actually, timing wise, it's not going to work because
Mm.
the summers they would do at the time they did something that was called a jet tour where they traveled 3 weeks across the country. They would have their big event of the year. So like the summer is a super crazy time period anyways, and they have like a couple incentive they had a couple events and like trips and whatever. So I was like, okay, first of all, thank you for even entertaining this. I appreciate it. And like, I know that it's a big ask. So first of all, it's just, I'm thankful that you would even consider this. But second of all, let me come out in the fall when things kind of slow down a little bit, present some ideas on like areas where you can improve the brand and where you could take things. So that was, I set the premise at that point. And then the response was like, cool, sure, let us know when you're in town kind of thing. Like, oh yeah, let me go to the
Yeah.
grocery store and swing by Dallas.
Did
But
they think you were serious though? Because like at that time, you were like in kind of this gap year of school, much younger. They're really starting to establish like Valuetainment as a brand. Like it wasn't what it is now, right? But it
no,
was starting to roll a little bit, right?
yeah, they were about 800,000 subscribers, creeping up on 1 million pretty fast. So I think that I threw it out there, and it was kind of like I was setting the expectation, but little did they know that I spent most of the summer talking to like putting together like reading books on social media and like strategy and these things, and getting an idea of okay, what can I tell them in terms of areas to improve the brand. And a lot of it too is just like me looking at it as like, hey, I'm your ideal client. This is what I'm interested. This is what I'm looking for. How can
Mm-hmm.
you help me as a brand, right? So I was
Mm-hmm.
talking to myself of me as a viewer enjoying the content, like what am I looking for, right? So it became a very easy process of just approaching it that way. And ultimately, the premise was just set up as like, hey, I'll come share some ideas. And I don't think it was taken serious at all until it was
Yeah.
kind of like, hey, like the summer's up. We talked about this a couple months ago. I have some ideas, and then I remember sending Patrick a message on Instagram, and he went like, "How specific?" And then I like do laid him out. He's like, "All right, cool, okay, talk to Mario, set up a meeting, we'll chat." And I was like, "All right, dope." So I set up the meeting, and then it basically what happens is it's like, okay, meet us Friday next week. I was like, all right, cool. And then Friday happened to be midterms week. So I had to go to my professor and be like, oh, you don't understand. Like, I got to move this test. Like, it's not going to happen. So I remember Wednesday, I'm in school. I finished the final like early. I basically have half the time. Like, if you have allotted like 3 hours to do it, I was like, all right, hour and a half, I got to dip because I got to go catch a flight. But then I flew out and I got there Thursday night in Dallas. And then Friday morning, they're like, or Thursday, they basically told me, hey, we're pushing it to Saturday. I was like, okay, cool. I fly
Yeah.
home Sunday,
Hold
so
on.
that's
So
not an issue.
but you flew from Norway.
Yes, to
Right.
Dallas.
So so let me just recap so everybody like fully understands here, right? Because we have a similar kind of journeys a little bit
Mhm.
here with a similar kind of strategy. But and one of the things that I always want to drive home is that like you have to kind of free yourself of expectation. And when you first sent those things back, and there was that lapse of the month, and there was no response from Bet David, and you're kind of like okay, and you're still staying persistent on it. So number one, during that time, was there ever a time where you were like, okay, if X time hits or whatever, I'm just going to give up and I won't message him anymore? Or was there enough where he was like giving you little bits enough to where you really believed that you were going to actually have a meeting with him?
No, so the meeting was never fully like set up. It was always just, hey, can I come work for you? Which was the first one. And then it became like, okay, cool. I can't do this. How about this?
Right.
So it was kind of like
Okay.
like it was kind of like I anchored it as, hey, I'm going to come work for you. And then it's like, all right, you've dragged me along. At least give me a 30-minute meeting. Like, let's settle for this.
Got it. Okay. And
And
then so there was even, and it was not like you were coming out as like a high profile guy meeting. So there was a strong chance that you could have flown out there. His schedule could have gone crazy and you would have
100%.
completely missed the meeting. Okay. So,
Yes.
and then that's where you're taking us right now. So that you
Yes.
flew in on that
So
Friday
yeah,
and then
so
moved it.
so
Okay.
I'm essentially promised half an hour, and then like there's some moving in the calendar because it's like, hey, can you meet us in New York? I'm like, no, like I'm flying to Dallas, and then it's like, okay, cool, like let's meet Saturday instead. We'll do a lunch. I was like, okay, cool, like whatever you need. Like, obviously I'm here and I'm ready. So you tell me. But the irony that happened was, I think then I land Thursday. I'm like, all right, cool. I have all day tomorrow to just like prep my notes, fine tune my pitch and my presentation. Everything will be good. I wake up at 8 a.m. and it's like, hey, can you be here at noon? I was like, crap, like I am not prepared, but yes, of course. So at that point, I'm like, all right, operation, like I got to iron out my shirt, got to get things ready, got to hop in the Uber, get there, and then just like study my slides or whatever and go through the notes. And then like I'd set up a whole PowerPoint slide. And I even added, like, you know how in the notes section you can add like your views, so you can kind of see the notes, thinking that there'd be a presentation and you could put it up. And then I get there, and then it's funny because I get there and then obviously like the TV isn't working. So now it's basically like, okay, the PowerPoint means me turning the computer around and just showing. And I was
Perfect.
like,
So
okay.
they get to see your notes and all the shit you have in there too.
Yes.
Right?
So I was like, I mean, okay,
God.
like I was like, all right, I'm prepared. Like it is what it is. I'll make the most out of it. But to go back to your question in terms of what was I getting enough, I think that my thought process going into it was ultimately like, okay, worst case, I go to school, I spend like some 200 grand on college debt, and like I go that route, or best case, I do every single thing in my power to be able to do, like, to get a meeting with him and eventually get hired. And at that point, I bypass all of that. So for me, it was like, I remember buying the ticket, or like being like, yo, dad, like the ticket's like $1,200. And he's like, are you sure about this? I'm like, yes. Buy, like, send it, like, we're going. Because I knew as well, like in the grand scheme of things, 1,200 to save 200 is a very good return on investment. So at that point I was like, all right, like I'm willing to do this, and at least that way I can go to school knowing, hey, I did everything in my power, like this wasn't meant to be, or like it was, I did anything I could to make sure it was going to happen, and it just didn't happen. But that I can live with. But if I knew like, ah, shit, I could have done this or this, that would have been more problematic.
Right. And you only I mean, shit, at that time, you were right at a great time because it was right before it really kind of blew up, but you could definitely see the trajectory that it was on. And you were at a perfect stage in life. So it's like, why not just roll the dice and do it?
No, 100%, 100%. Like it was the best thing I've ever done. And like to start there, to build, to grow, and just see where it went. I mean, I was the first outside hired employee. And by the time I left, there was about 100 people working there. So like it was a multiple lifetimes of experience just in a couple of years.
And so as the meeting goes, so you're there. Well, we'll first take us. So when you got there, how nervous were you kind of with your presentation and them like walking into the room? And here's a funny thing to contrast it with, because Sebon, the guy who hosts the show, he was the CMO of CrossFit Group from 500 gyms to 15,000 gyms. Saw it through its biggest growth. Lots of work in the media space outside of it as well. But when I remember it was very similar. I was like, hey, can you come on my podcast? And I was kind of doing this recording thing. And he's like, yeah, but you got to be here by this time. Just come to my house. And I was like, okay. And I remember him kind of opening the door, and I had seen a lot of stuff with media, never really met him, too much before that. And I was like, oh shit, this seems surreal. Like I see him and his kids, and it feels like I should be watching them on the internet, but they're in front of me. And the funny part about it is I know that David is like 6'3" or 6'2". So
he's tall.
Yeah, which is the opposite because Sebon's 5'5". So
okay, so it makes it a little bit less intimidating for sure.
Yeah, but it was still just surreal. So take me there. So you're chilling, like what? Did they keep you in a waiting room? Is it all official?
Yeah, so I get there early because ultimately I'm like terrified of showing up late. And like I think it was like a 40-minute drive. So I'm like, I don't know, traffic, 40 minutes could mean an hour if you leave 5 minutes later. So I was like, all right, screw it. I'm just gonna go, and then I'm gonna get there early. And then like first thing was, okay, you're here early. But I was like, no, I get that. Like I'm just here because I don't want to be late. So I was sitting outside in the reception, kind of the lobby area. And then after, I want to say I probably sat there for like 20 minutes. And at that point I was like going through my notes, and then I got to a point where I was like, okay, now I just need to chill. Like, cause I've always been the type of person where, you know how the people like still cram right before the test. I'll get in there and I'm like, all right, F it. If I'm not prepared now, I'm like ship sailed. Like I'm here, I'm ready. Let's do this and let's make the most out of it. So that's kind of the mindset that I was trying to take with it at the at Patrick's as well, because it was like, okay, I'm better off now, just like trying to take a couple deep breaths and relaxing. And then when I met him, we were in a conference room. It was him, myself, and then a guy named Mario, which is like been a guy who's been with him for 20 years at this point, close to. So it was us three, and then like the good thing was we were able to chat a little bit before we jumped into the presentation, which I think kind of like decrease the nerves of like, okay, he's human, like he's just
Settled
another
in.
dude.
Right.
Yeah, it's like it humanizes him more, kind of like what you're saying, where it's like, oh crap, what am I doing? It was more so that it was like, no, like at the end of the day, like he's human, he's just another dude, and like if you approach it that way, it's gonna be easier to kind of talk about it. But beyond that, I think within probably the first 10 minutes, like I felt comfortable, and it was like a little bit more of a back and forth conversation, and like it was good dialogue, and like he asks a lot of questions and he's always curious. So like it didn't become very like intimidating, and I mostly went pretty well in terms of overall, but it was definitely like a big kind of like, holy crap.
Yeah. So when you were going through that presentation, did you have anything within that strategy that really caught their eye, or were they just overall impressed with your ability to kind of see the larger picture and contribute to some sort of vision as to where it's going to go?
Great question. So I think the way I looked at it, which was like the irony of all of this, right? Which was kind of why I think it gave me a lot of comfort. It didn't matter what I said. It just mattered my actions, in terms of like, I took the chance to fly out from Norway. I'm probably the person that's flown the furthest to ever meet him. And at that point, I think that there's a tremendous amount of like respect or credibility that kind of lends to the situation. So I think that was number one. Number two was ultimately, I knew that like none of what I said was new ideas or like anything new under the sun. It was just more like, hey, here's ways to optimize this. Here's ways to think of this. This should be considered. What about this? Or like, here are other ideas. So it was more the actions of me flying out, of me like showing that, hey, I'm prepared and I know this, versus any one thing being like, oh, this gold, this is gold, and like this is like everything else was trash. But this one piece makes you worth hiring. Like, I don't really see it that way. It was more so that I almost felt that it'd be like, I've shown him this much in terms of my willingness and my eagerness and a good attitude, and like willing to push the pedal and go hard, that at that point it's kind of almost indebted that like it's going to happen. So that's kind of how I approached it more, where I was like, okay, I don't know, but I'm going to do everything in my power. And if it's good, it's good. And like throughout the presentation, there was a lot of like, oh, this is a good point. We need to do more of this. Like we need to do.
So you were hitting some stuff that they were resonating with.
For sure. Where I was like, oh, what about this? Or what about this? And they're like, yeah, no, this is good. Like, Mario, make a note. Like, let's look at this, or let's add this, or kind of, these are good. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny. I was just saying the other day to some of the coaches over at my gym, I was joking. I was saying it tongue in cheek, but I was being serious. And I said, the lowest form of contribution is an idea. Because it's like, and that's why you could show up with a bunch of ideas, like how you were saying, but it wasn't necessarily the ideas that you were showing up with. It was all the action that you took in terms of getting yourself there to show like, okay, he's not just going to show up with an idea. He's also willing to take the action into what it takes to accomplish these things. And that's rare. And, and it's becoming more and more rare.
Yeah, no, it's funny because a lot of people talk about how like, oh, this is like, how do you do it? It's so hard. Like, there's so many people. I'm like, no, it's honestly easier than ever, because the bar is so low, and people want things spoon fed to them, and they come and they're like, hey, Matt, can you mentor me? And like, it's like, no, wait, you're now putting more work on me. Right. It's like, you're coming here wanting me to tell you what to do. I don't have time for that. Like, I'm busy. So it's like, no, what you need to do is you need to just say, hey, here are these 4 things that I see we're done badly. Here's how to do them. You could just copy paste and adjust it and change it. Okay, awesome. Like, you've solved the problem versus adding another problem. So that was a big thing that I looked at too, where I was like, okay, if I just come and it's like, hey, I'd like to work with you, what can I do for you? Then it's like, it goes back to them, versus, hey, I watch the content, I watch the channel, like, I'm the person that is consuming all your videos. Here are all the things that I think we can improve. And the irony of a lot of it is I basically spent the next 5 years doing the majority of the things that I mentioned in the video, but like year by year and like thing by thing over time. So one of the big things that I mentioned was like e-commerce. I built out the department, everything from sourcing to fulfillment to website to digital ads, you name it. Scaled that to do well over 6 million in the years that I was there. So like, I did all these things, and it kind of just started. It was a very organic process of how it all evolved, but it just started with the idea of, hey, I'm going to make your life easier, not add more to it. And I'm going to show my value, and I'm going to show that I'm a hard worker and that I have a good attitude, so that it becomes infectious and you just want me to win, right? That's what it comes down to. Because I knew at the end of the day, like, I had no skills that nobody else had. Like, there was nothing that made me unique beyond the intangible components of, are you willing to work harder than everyone else? Are you a better attitude? Are you going to take like the crappiest tasks and just do it by like, hey, I don't have an issue. Like, there's nothing beneath me, right? Because at the end of the day, you have to earn your stripes, and that's where it starts. Now, over time, you win a lot of respect that way, but that's just the way it is, where it's like, hey, I'm at the bottom. And I realized too, early on, my thought process was, okay, I know nothing, and I'm very like fortunate to be here in that sense. But also for me, if it takes me 1 hour to do what it takes you, Matt, to do in 30 minutes, like, I need to work twice as much as you just to be able to get the same output, let alone do more. And at that point, I approached it with that mindset, knowing that, hey, in the beginning, you're just going to have to, like, the only way you can win is just by outworking, putting in more hours, and being a good attitude, and like having the willingness to do it, because those are the intangibles. And as soon as you find those, and I'm sure if you've hired people and you've worked with people, it's like, as soon as you find those people, it's like, dude, you're making my life easier. Like, yes, I want you. Like, do more for me.
Yeah, that's exactly right. A couple comments here. Where's Judy at? Oh my God, this is Souza's language. Yep, they know me. Where's Jonathan? I've asked Matt to let me work for him, and he leaves me on red. Not true, Jonathan. In fact, I got some stuff for you. Olivia,
keep following
Kai
up.
is Souza's new BFF.
Right on.
She also said, impressive young man. Yes, he is. And Olivia's getting a little wild here. I imagine Patrick smells so delicious.
No comments.
Does So when you were like, okay, so here's one of the things I've realized through my journey of entrepreneurship, and maybe this might resonate with you a little bit, is like I used to get these little opportunities or breaks or these meetings and stuff similar to like what you're talking about. Nothing as impactful in that, but like this contract, or I landed this thing, and in my mind I kept thinking like, okay, this was it. Like, this is the thing that goes. And then eventually I realized that's never going to happen. It's a collection of all these multiple things over time, and it takes a lot of time. And so the question is like, when you left that first meeting and you were like flying back home, you're probably like feeling yourself high as a kite, got the meeting and everything else. Like, number one, did you feel like, hey, this is the thing? And number two, were you also like, damn, now what the hell do I do next? Like, I hope this works.
You're gonna love this. So we're in the meeting. Goes well. Like, it's supposed to be a 30-minute meeting. We go 90 minutes. Like, we're talking. We're like, bam, bam, bam. I'm feeling like, okay, cool. Now because at the time I spent like probably well over a month putting together everything, and like doing school, working, and doing this. It's like, it was long hours, and I was like, bro, now I'm exhausted. And at the time, what we had after that is basically the equivalent of like a Thanksgiving break the week after. So like, I flew out to him on Thursday and then flew home Sunday. And then that whole week, 7 days I had off. And I was like, amazing. Like, now I'm just going to chill, like play some Fortnite, sleep, not do anything. Like, finally I can rest, right? 1 month of hard work and I've earned like this. But before I end up leaving, he goes, I have another task for you, which is typical PBD, where like, there's always what's next, right? And he goes, I have another task for you. And then I'm like, okay, cool. And he goes like, okay, you're going to put together ideas for the vaults, because at the time I believe they had just passed the 1 million mark like a week earlier, like 2 weeks earlier.
And that was when they did the first conference, right?
Yes.
That was like
so he told me basically like, hey, in January, we're going to announce the vault. And at that point, we're going to host our first Valuetainment event. I want you to come up with ideas on like things we could do, or like just creative input, right? And then I was like, it got to me where I was like, oh, crap. Because just as you think like this is the one thing that's going to change everything, there's like a ton of work right behind it. Yeah. But I was like, okay, like awesome. Like, got to strike the iron while it's hot and make the most out of it. So I then came home and I was like, okay, Google, how to plan events. I was like, I don't know anything. I was like, what are things you need to know or be aware of in order to plan events? And then it started with just YouTubing, Googling, and coming up with ideas. And then I broke it down into, I think, 3 sections of like pre-event, during, or pre-event, ideas for the event, and then during the event to like make the experience better. And it just, I mean, put together a bunch of notes, spent I think a week and a half putting it together, sent that over, and then I didn't hear anything. And then I was like, okay. And then I was supposed to hear something, and then I got moved, and then this and this and this and this. And then I think about a month or month and a half later, because timeline wise, I met with him, I think it was 28th of September. I deliver this mid-October, and then it goes a month and I don't hear anything. And then it's like, I hear, okay, cool, you're on the team. We want to bring you on. We have to figure out what this is going to look like. And then I hear nothing. And then at that point, I'm like, okay, it ain't over until it's over, right?
Right.
You haven't closed the deal until the money's in the bank. So I was like, I'm not going to get like high on my own supply, because I know last time they said it was good, it fell through. So I'm like, all right, what do we need to do? Like, what are we doing? So I was like, until I have an offer letter in my email inbox, nothing's official. And I kept following up, and then I got a message from Patrick on Instagram. He's like, hey, I spoke to the team. If you're up for it, come on out. We'll bring you on like as a trial until the vaults, and then we'll see if it's a good fit. We'll keep you. I was like, all right, done. Enough said. Like, that's all I needed. At that point, I was like, I fucking did it. Like, that's when it clicked.
That was it.
Then I was like, yes. Then I was like, okay, I did it. Like, this is awesome. And at the time, it was like a week before my semester at school was finished. So now I had to like scramble and go to my teachers and be like, yo, I'm out. I'm not back next semester. Like, I gotta go.
Yeah.
And it was so funny because I hadn't really told anyone what I was up to when I left for midterms week. I think partially because I was like, I don't know, like if this goes south, I don't want to hype it up where I fly to Dallas
and then come back and like shamefully like walk back into class. Yeah.
I was like, yo, I'm about to go meet Patrick, and then like you come back and it's like, yeah, actually he was busy. Like, so I kept it very low key, and then afterwards I was like, okay, now I could breathe out. So I ended up dropping out, getting everything organized, moving out of the dorms, and like moving back home. And then within a week later, I flew out to Dallas, and that just started it.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. So what was kind of like the office dynamics like? Because you see a lot of it, you know, from the media aspect there, but is it really like, because earlier you had mentioned you had trouble reading with a lot of different stuff, and I know that that's huge, or at least like from, you know, outward looking in, it's pretty big as far as like reading books, self-development, all that stuff within the culture of that office. So when did that change for you? Did you just start listening to Audible books? Like,
no, so I mean, that all changed when I moved to the States in 2016 initially. Like I think like there was a lot of small things I did where he had a book list, like Patrick's, I think it was 52 recommended books. And when I sat down with him, I like put some papers in front of him and like, here are all the books I've read. And it was probably like 70% of the ones on his book. And I had 3 years in a row where I read 100 books, as in a combination of books and audiobooks. So like I was very well, because I've always been super curious and like super interested in just learning and consuming content. So for me, it was more so that I dislike reading even to the day today, but I like learning. So it's one of those, you do it in order to learn. And that was a part of the process. So for me, like the whole reading the books, this, that, and the other was never an issue. And it was something I'd been doing many years prior. Like it was the setup of getting ready for that in many ways. So that was never an issue. And the office dynamics was really interesting because when I first started, I was the first outside employee hired at Valuetainment, because at the time he was still very involved in his financial company. And I'd say 90% of his schedule was dedicated to that. And like the Valuetainment was like this side hustle that you do after hours as like a passion project. So although I started and I was in an office at his headquarters in Texas, where there were probably like, say, between 50 and 70 employees, there were like 4 of us that were like hidden away in this corner next to his office that worked primarily on Valuetainment stuff. And even within that, I was the only one who worked on exclusively Valuetainment. Because a lot of them were like hybrids, where it's like, okay, you're a graphic designer and you're you do it for the financial company, and then also you make the thumbnails or whatever for Valuetainment.
Right. It just was a little crossover, and he was making a lot of content for PHP too as well.
Correct.
As far as that stuff, so it was like a natural transition. And so as you started to ladder up there inside the job, like what did that look like? Was it just you accomplished well at the vault, they liked the way that you hustled, you kind of put your money where your mouth is, and then next thing you know, they're offering you like what? Was there any one big thing? You had mentioned the e-commerce. Was that like, did you get to own that P&L?
So like,
or
everything started and like just happened very organically, where like my first task when I came to Valuetainment was, hey, there's this cubicle that somebody sat in a while back. It's been used as a storage since then. Like, just clear it out. Like,
Yeah, get the
here's where you
dust
put
off
this.
it and throw your shit in
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
here's where you put this. Here's where you put this, and then tomorrow we'll have IT come and set a computer up. I was like, all right, dope. It was like the second closest cubicle to Patrick's office. So I was like, whoever's sitting on that side, you're on my hit list. Like, you're going down. And then it was funny because then it just evolved, and it started with that, and then it was like, hey, here's an email inbox that has 1,000 unread emails. 80% of it is probably spam, and there's like there might be some stuff in it. Like, go through that. So it was like, okay, I go through the email inbox. There's a couple of things that are like things they actually need. A lot of it is like create a system for, okay, these are speaking requests. These are this, these are that. Here's what needs to be done. And then it just evolved, like everything. When I tell you, like, everything evolved, it was like, hey, I have some ideas you should do for content. And it's like, okay, cool, give them to me, or like put them together and then email them to Mario. And like, whenever I meet with him, we'll go over that. And then it was like, okay, the ideas were pretty good. And then it's like, okay, can you do more for next week? And then it just evolved, right?
Yeah.
And then it started with, now I'm in the meetings. Like, then after a couple of weeks, I get invited to the meeting where like you're ideating ideas and you're coming up with things. So it's not me just passing the ideas. Now it's like, okay, tell me why these ideas. And then within a couple of months, it's just me in those meetings now. It's me and it's Pat and I. And then it's like, okay, then it just evolved naturally. And then I think 3 years I was doing content with him, where content was primarily the focus. And then I also managed the social media, because it was kind of like one of those, social media guy quit, and then it's like, congrats, Kai, you're now
you got a new job.
Yeah. It's like, okay, you know all the other stuff all the other stuff you were doing? Yeah, you're doing that and social media now. So it's funny because I half jokingly say that in almost 5 years I was there, I never really knew my title, because it was like, I do this and this and this and this. Like, I just GSD, get shit done. Like, I don't know. Like, so no, but it was fun. But because like, I mean, that's the life of a startup, right? It's like you're living, you're doing whatever needs to be done. There's no such thing as, hey, this is my job. Whatever needs to get done gets done, and it's like whoever's available does it, right? So a lot of that. But it also gave me a very big and like wide breadth of understanding of the business as a whole, because it's like I've touched every single component. I know how they're connected. I know what intersects and why they play a role, like how they're connected. But ultimately, like the first 3 years was like that, because it was first year, and then COVID hit, and nobody knew what the heck was going on. Right. And then and then here I thought that it was so funny. Like, COVID happened, and I remember Patrick and I sitting on a Sunday. And it was like before the everything shut down and everything. And I'm like, yo, Pat, like, do you like, this video is not going to be ready till Tuesday next week. Do you still think this is going to be relevant, like, in 3 days? Or is this kind of just a trend and then nobody cares? Which was ironic, because little did we know. But whenever COVID happened, I remember buying a 1,000-piece puzzle and a piano keyboard, thinking, okay, now I'm going to have a lot of downtime. So like, I guess I'll just figure something out, and like, I'll
learn the piano and play.
Yeah, learn the piano, like do a 1,000 puzzle piece, like, yes. And then I remember what happened was, basically we sat down and Patrick goes, all right, everyone's home, we're doubling content. And I was like, wait, what? Like, you said what? And then I think like within a couple of months, the podcast started too. And then that was more. So like it just kept adding and it kept growing. But obviously, as you get more familiar, you get better at it. Your capacity to do the work increases. Right. So it was a very natural process. And then we moved to Florida, and then I was doing that for a year. And then that's kind of where I was like, okay, now I feel like everything that I'm doing is just very like cut and dry. And it's like, it's just the same rinse and repeat process. And that's where I was looking for a new challenge. And that's where it kind of was like, okay, we're doing all these views. We don't have e-commerce. Like, let me build that out. That was one of the ideas I brought up all those years ago. Okay, cool. So I did that, which then was e-commerce and doing the content. And then I got there was a social media intern that came in, took over the social media. So I was overseeing that. And it was just kind of a very organic process. And then it was like, hey, you're doing merch now, or you're doing merch and e-commerce, do digital marketing as well. It's like, okay, I don't know about digital marketing, but like, let's do it. So then it evolved. Like, that's everything. There's a big saying there where more is caught, not taught. And that is ultimately like heavily how I was trained, and like everything was just evolved, where it was like a very natural, like, 1 + 1 = 2, and then it's like, oh, what about 3? And can you do 4? And then it just kind of snowballs.
And it went for there. What was that quote again? More is caught than taught.
Yeah, more is caught, not taught.
Not taught. Yeah. That's the same way I like to learn too. Like I have to have there, and I've learned this about myself over time, but there has to be high stakes. Like there has to be some sort of like deadline, consequence, like something, because that's going to like move me to urgency. Number two, like it has to be something that like I believe in and I'm passionate about. So I'm willing to actually put that work and put myself into it. And I know if I have those type of things, and it's a beginning of a recipe of success. So as you were kind of going through those jobs and stuff, like I just want to make it clear for the audience, because the workload must have been insane. So you were like, were you the one physically, like you'd watch the podcast and then you would like cut the clip and then you would like also get it ready for social media, and then you're also checking the website to make sure the shirts are all in inventory and the fulfillment is happening over here?
Almost. Like I never did the technical components in terms of editing or anything like that. But during the podcast, for instance, I'd sit there, and during the podcast, like or the night before, it always starts with you come up with like the list of the topics, and then you put those together. And then during the podcast, you're sitting there. Like I typically I'd have a stopwatch, and I'd like, okay, podcast starts. Okay, 5 minutes in, we start talking about this topic. So I'd write like 5 minutes, and then you go down, and then you know like what the short clips are right after the podcast, because then you're like, oh, we talked about this topic, this topic, this topic, this topic. So then you send the time codes to the editors, then they chop it up, and at that point you go sit with the designer and like, here's what I want for the thumbnails. This is what it should look like. You get those back. Then you upload them to YouTube, or like the editors drop it into YouTube. And then from there, you make sure everything's good. You add the thumbnail that you get from the graphic designer. Then you come up with titles. You send those suggestions over, and then we launch the clips. And that's one of the parts. And then it's also like the other components with like merchandise or whatever else, or like what are the other events we had going on. That became the process. Now, I want to say, after doing all of it for a year, then like it became more like I moved towards the end. I was not involved in content at all. Like I'd say the last couple months, because at that point we'd brought in somebody to do that capacity full time. And that allowed me to pull back and focus more of my time on the e-commerce and digital marketing. So at the end, it was like I was not involved on other than like an advisory or input basis, but nothing was like under my direct supervision of making sure that things were done A to B to C.
Right. Was that Rob? Did they hire him into that position, or is he just specifically produced the podcast?
No, he was the booker that then became the producer of the podcast. There was another guy that's behind the scenes that does the research.
Okay, yeah, because that was going to be another question that I had, was like the research that goes into some of that content is insane. So was there just a straight up like research team that is used where like there's like, hey, we want to talk about that? Was you? That was
me the night before.
Shit. So all the things with like I'm trying to remember some of the videos, but I know some of them, the recents were all like the housing costs, or like all the information on like trades or different things like that to give you a scope around a topic. So you would research all that shit and then package it up for. So
while I was there, I did that for the how-to videos, and then the first 100 episodes of the podcast. And then I sent that over. So like it became a very extensive, like just brain dump of learning things and understanding it and the structure of it. Now, it's funny because ultimately like my job was and became quickly to like learn to think the way Patrick thought, which has probably been like the greatest thing that could ever happen, because that just like the way ideas are approached and like the structure, because it might not look like there's a lot of structure, but there is generally in terms of the setup of the episodes and the structure. So a lot of it was you start with this, then you look at the history, like here's a problem, let's take a look at what's happened before, what's going on right now, and then what are my predictions, right? Or it's like what happened before, my predictions, and then what we can learn from this, right? Like there was some loose kind of architectural structures on it. But the big thing then was like, oh, what about this? Oh, I'm glad you asked. What about this? Oh, glad you asked. But in the beginning, there's a lot more back and forth because it's like you don't know. But over time, it becomes this very well-oiled machine in the sense of like the structure. And at that point, you're doing the research. So a lot of it is like you're just looking for the data that fits the the different components, and then you plug it in. So back in the day when I was doing it, we weren't going as in depth in terms of the topics because it was more like entrepreneurial based. It was a little bit more creative. Now, in terms of the way the content has gone, it's a lot more. It's longer videos. It's more kind of data driven, so to speak, if you want. And he moved away from the board, which was a big part of like the original early day content.
Right.
So it's evolved a little bit, and I'm sure there's more stuff going into it now than it was when I did it. But at the end of the day, when I was doing it, it was like one of the 12 other things I was working on throughout the week. So we were kind of working with the resources we had, but I was doing it for the podcast through the first 100 episodes.
Yeah, and you had involvement in the book, right? Choose your enemies wisely, or
both of them,
both books.
Yeah.
Holy shit! So you basically just got like a fast track into skill acquisition and everything you could imagine. That's pretty valuable. Some interesting question here. Olivia, did Kai have involvement in the Sammy and Michael Friesen interviews? Sounded like that was extremely hectic to put together.
So not any sort of direct involvement in terms of like negotiations or anything. I was there to the left of the let me think. So if you look at the podcast, where's the side Sammy's sitting on, I'm like sitting here, like right outside the shot. So I was there doing the audio. I was there for the whole production, the content creation, the preparation, and then the post-production as well. But mostly so on the research basis, not necessarily, or not anything on the like getting it together. That's all Patrick.
Yeah, that's who you've met. A lot of high profile people. Anybody stand out in your mind, like memorable moment?
The biggest one I think was Kobe, which was someone I met. It was the first superstar I ever met, and I've never been so like starstruck in my entire life. And I think like that is probably the first and last time it will ever happen, just because like the precedence was set, and then I just like it hasn't been any close. But I remember I'd worked there for, I want to say 7 months at that point. It's like end of July. I walk in and like early on, like I was very fortunate in terms of like my role was kind of like super malleable. So I always was in rooms where it's like, if you kind of did a head count of like, why are you here? Why are you here? Why are you here? Everyone had a reason except me. It's kind of like, I don't know, like I'm just here. Like I'm a part of the gang. Like I'm just, I don't know, like I'm just
door was left open.
Yeah, like if anyone needs help, like I'm here. So it kind of became like a multi-purpose Swiss tool in that sense. But I remember we were in Vegas, and then Kobe Bryant had entered, and he was going to speak at one of the conferences, and I like everyone's walking in, and there's like full on security around him, and I'm just kind of like walking as well, and then I'm there in the room, and I'm like, oh crap, there's Kobe, so I go talk to him, and like for the record, I haven't followed a lot in basketball. Like I knew obviously that he's like the GOAT and he's Kobe, but beyond that, it's like if you ask me what number he was or what games he played or this, that, like I know he plays for Lakers, but that's about it, right? My dad loved him. My brother loved him. So like I'd half jokingly told them like, oh, I'll get you a signature from Kobe or something. And then I'm there in the moment. I'm like, and he's like, I mean, Patrick's big, but Kobe's like even more. And I was like, and I remember I was so starstruck. I was like, my voice was cracking, and like I'm asking him, and like instead of having a normal conversation, I ask him a question, and then I like completely blank. And then like I have to build up the courage to be like, okay, Kobe, like can you give a shout out to my dad and my brother? And I do it in the video, and the video is shaking because my hand is like this. It looks like it's so bad. And then the worst part was to wrap it up. I'm like, okay, Kobe, can we take a picture? Right? He goes, absolutely. And like, my hand is shaking. I can't hit the photo button. So I go, do you mind taking it? And he goes, no, I got you. So I have the picture with Kobe, and like, it's a funny story. And unfortunately, like with everything that happened with the way he passed away, it's really sad. But to me, it was just like, I don't know if there's anything that's ever going to top that. And like, since then I've met a lot of people from Mike Tyson, Jordan Peterson. I mean, you name it, superstars, athletes, billionaires, this, that, and the other. And like, it's been very like, oh, cool. Oh, nice to meet you. But like at that point it did it. But I think also like it's your first kind of like interaction with that. You understand it, and then you get acclimated to it. So that's the big part of it too.
And it is funny because like you were saying earlier, you kind of humanize them. So it's like, it's interesting, that dynamic, because you see people on these screens, or you build them up like into your head, and then you see them, and hopefully some of them actually, live up to it, which I imagine Kobe did, because there was always such great things said about him.
Yeah.
So that's really cool though. So what the hell is a quiz funnel?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. So the way I kind of explain quiz funnels is ultimately, if you look at when you go to a store, right? Say you go into a store and you go to Levi's, you're gonna then be approached by the person working there, and they're gonna be like, "Hey, what are you interested in? How can I help you?" Right? And it's like, "Okay, cool. I'm this waist, this length, this is the style I'm looking for," and then you get recommendations, right? But if you go online, it's like it's just dumped on you, and it's like, okay, you got to figure that out, right? Now,
Yeah.
good website design can help you navigate, can help you kind of interact and figure things out. But a quiz funnel essentially becomes that attendant where it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, what price point are you looking for, right? Oh, I want to spend this much. Like, I got $100. Give me the best pair of pants, right? Or I don't want skinny jeans and I don't want baggy jeans. I want something in the middle, right? So a quiz funnel essentially is a very engaging process to take people through where you can ask these questions and they can answer it. So the user has a better experience as they go through the process, and you collect the data in terms of getting an understanding of what they're interested in, what they want, but also B, you can then drive all the traffic in one way, and then you can segment them and move them to whatever product or variation makes the most sense. So that's essentially what a quiz funnel is. And on the back end of it, you can do a lot of creative things because we all talk about how data is the new oil and like data is the most important thing you can. But at the end of the day, if you're not capturing it, like privacy is becoming an issue now where YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all these things are like, no, we're not going to give you as much data. Like you can't do as much targeting. So now the value of you owning this data where it's zero party data of your customers basically telling you what they're interested in, what they want, becomes that much more valuable because now you can customize the way you do marketing to them, right? For instance, well, let's do a CrossFit example.
Yeah.
If you're in CrossFit and like there's different outcomes, right? Are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to build strength? Are you a man? Are you a woman? Like those four things will tremendously change the what you recommend someone do or what program or what type of routine or anything. But if it's like websites operate in a way where it's one size fits all, but a quiz funnel can give you that flexibility to allow you to fully be able to now give a customized journey and a customized pathway to the user in the process. So it's the same way as having a full-time salesperson working for you at scale around the clock for free.
Yeah, and I imagine you could guide the questions, and then you'd also have that data, which allows you to know more about the customer that's reaching out to you too, right?
Yes, exactly. It's like, okay, cool. So then you can start emailing them, and also you can help them more if you look at it, right? If you're doing, say you do online coaching and it's within CrossFit, right? We'll go back to that example.
Yeah.
If I know if you're trying to build strength or lose weight, I can give you totally different advice. I can give you totally different channels of, hey, here's meal plans, here's this, here's that. Like you can completely alter the way someone interacts with your brand based on just knowing a few things about them. And that's what a quiz funnel allows you to figure out. And that's what it teaches like you about your customer, but also the ability to then give them a better experience with your brand.
Yeah. So how does it work? Is this your new venture right now? Do you build these quiz funnels for businesses?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. So take me through that. What does that look like? Is it a landing page? Do you just run like an ad through Meta and it just leads them down the path to a lead magnet? What does it look like?
It's an ecosystem. The quiz in itself is the lead magnet and the resource, because what you do is so it starts with an ad, right? Where like, okay, hey, are you into the CrossFit? Like, are you into fitness? Take this quiz to see what the number one mistake you make with CrossFit, right? Okay. And then it takes them through the quiz where what we do is we start off with basically doing like a deep dive in terms of the audience of who you're trying to get at, like who are you trying to attract? What's your business? Like, who's your customer? Okay, what are challenges they go through? What are mistakes they have? Like, what are the archetypes or archetypes of these people? And then once you get that, then you reverse engineer the process of like, okay, if we know that they generally fall within these buckets or these problems, then we restructure a quiz to build it as a very interactive experience for them to figure out what their mistake is, right? And then we add some like I call them data questions, where now it's like, okay, what is important data for you to know in terms of interacting with these, right? So You ask them questions that teach them and help them with their stuff. And then you also ask them a couple questions that helps you with your approach to marketing and how you interact with these. Then once you have that all wired out, you then start essentially building it together, where you could do it in a myriad of different ways, but typically there's a couple different funnel softwares one could utilize. And then people can go through this. And then on the back end, you can send them to, hey, book a call, come in for a free workout, check this out, buy this course, check this out, like however you want to do it. It's just kind of fitting it to whatever the customer's needs are. And then at the top of it, you then run ads to bring people into this, to then push them through this process. And a lot of what I tell people is like, if you're doing lead generation online for local business and you get 100 leads, but only like half of them are qualified, a lot of it becomes excess then. And the quiz funnel is a way to segment and qualify who you want to talk to, but then also give the people that aren't qualified or you're not able to help and serve, you can give them a different product, or like a downsell, which we call it in digital marketing, where it's like, you're not fit for the tier A product, but like I have these other options that could be of help for you as well.
Yeah. So then that way there's still some sort of value for those ones that aren't necessarily qualified
Correct.
for your pushing.
Exactly.
Into. And so if I were to try this with my gym on a local level, does it lay over the top of my website, or would it just be a completely separate thing? And then once we have that contact, essentially I would just move that database into my CRM.
You can do both. You can do it as a individual thing, depending on what your website is right now and how that feeds into it. You can then say, hey, you're fit for this, and you could push them to the website. But generally speaking, you can pre-vet most of it on the front end in the quiz itself, and then you just connect the CRM that shoots it into your system, where now it's like, okay, cool, now you have a new lead here.
Yeah, and that could just like overlay of something of like a Go High Level or something like that.
Exactly. Like I have many clients that work with Go High Level, and they use Go High Level as the back end. You plug a quiz on the front end, and then you can use the email automations, the text automations, the appointment setting, anything you have in terms of needs. You could just push that into the ecosystem to then be able to qualify and segment and then automate on the back end.
Awesome. And what does that process look like? Is there some sort of like retainer with you guys first to get started, or like give me, because I'm actually generally
that's a great question
about using this. Yeah.
No, that's a great question, and I'd love to chat about that too, because basically the quiz itself is a project-based kind of structure, where before we sit down, we'll lay out, here are the deliverables. This is the structure we want it to look like. This is the level of complexity in terms of like systems that need to communicate and how everything's connected. That's a project-based structure where it's like, hey, I owe you, this is the timeline that I'm going to give you this output of work. We're going to make sure it works, and then we're going to hand it over to you, right? Mm-hmm. After that, it then becomes like an ongoing retainer structure where it's like, hey, do you want me to help you continuously run ads to this? Absolutely, I can. This is what this service looks like, right? Or I can also help with email marketing on the back end. For some people, it's way more relevant. Like if it's a local and it's lead generation, I don't know how much email marketing is being done, but that's also something that I would totally recommend, because the amount of people that opt in and it might not be a good fit at the time, but then you run a promotion or you have something, you now have an own distribution channel, which you don't have to pay anyone to get in front of these people. And if they expressed interest in CrossFit or working out at one point, odds are they're still interested. It's just not the right time, right?
Right. You could just repackage it or resend it at a different time.
Exactly. So like you've paid for the lead. You've paid for the lead on the front end, so why not maximize and get the most out of it later on too, versus if it just didn't work the first time, right?
Yeah.
So that's how that works, and that then becomes more of like a retainer structure where, depending on what you need, depending on how much spend we're doing, depending on the allocation of what it looks like, then I can help you out with that too. But the benefit there too, obviously on my end, is that I know the quiz funnel structure, and I know, like, I've had a lot more experience with running ads to specific quizzes. And I also know the way people interact and how you can segment and split up the email marketing on the back end to make it personalized. Because there was a case study with a guy named Justin Welch who built a quiz. He sells online products and like courses, and he did a quiz where he asked his customers, how do you make money in terms of, are you an agency? Are you a service? Are you e-commerce? Are you this or that? And then he asked them, the second question was, how far along in your journey are you, right? Are you somebody who's doing this as a passion project, but you're in a full-time job? Is this your gig? Is this something you're looking to scale? And based on that, he did personalized marketing, which is what you can do based on the segmented data. And he found that when he ran his marketing to the segmented part of the list, he saw a 38% increase in conversions because it could be personalized marketing and it could be more relevant to who they are, right? So if you go through the quiz and you know that the number one thing that holds people back from doing CrossFit is that they don't have a lot of time, you can then say, hey, are you looking to get fit with limited time, or you only have an hour to work out? It's you don't have 3 hours to go to LA Fitness and hit the gym. Well, we have short circuit programs that are 27 minutes of nonstop fit or CrossFit. Okay, awesome. Yeah. That's a huge selling point, because then you know what they're really struggling with, or what holds them from going to the gym, versus it being some generic, I just don't have time, or I don't know how to, or I don't like to, right? Yeah. So you can utilize that to then just personalize the marketing, and you'll see a significant increase in messaging, but also in conversions, because you're speaking to people, you're making them feel heard and understood, which obviously drives conversions.
Yeah, and then you're giving them exactly what they're asking for, essentially.
Correct.
Heidi Chrome, is he single?
Yes, I am single.
And $1.99. Thank you, Heidi. Does Kai have a wife quiz I could take?
I mean, we'll have to make one, I guess.
Completely unrelated to the question above. Oh,
First
no,
one.
Completely related. I'm trying to attract Kai. Okay.
There you go.
Heidi's cool. She's cool, but you can't really fuck with her because she's like a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, so she'll break your arm off at the same time.
So I gotta be careful.
Yeah, because look at her. You wouldn't think that though, right? You would just there's no way you would ever look at her and think, oh, she could break my arm off.
Yeah, no, she looks sweet.
But she'd do it. Heidi Lodes Crumb. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, they're getting
They're getting creative.
Oh my goodness. Oh, almost purple belt. Excuse me, Heidi. Don't.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't let me pull that away from you.
Don't beat him up.
Jeez. So okay, I'll reach out separate than this, because I really do think that I own a media company as well called Media Launch, and it works within the CrossFit ecosystem of this podcast. We have some athletes with Peter White, who runs that. We have a European division, but we also work with all the brands in the space to kind of develop content and then distribute that content. And so I think I think we have a nice synergy there, and I'd love to test some of your stuff out and get it in front of some people. Okay, so before I let you go, thank you. I already know I'm over time a little bit. You got time for one more question?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay, awesome. So, does Adam really take that long to make a point in real life as well as he does on the podcast? That motherfucker could circle the airport a lot of times before he lands a plane.
Oh, he's good. He knows how to talk. That's for sure.
It's okay. So
I'll put it at that.
And then Tom from the Mr. BizDoc, Tom.
Yeah.
Is when you're around somebody like him and a couple of the other people there, are you really is he like that all the time? Is he just of an analytical mind and he's constantly looking for the opportunity or the angle or a different perspective on that? And did you gain any of that? Did any of that kind of rub off or stick onto you from him?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he is that way. There's no doubt about that. That's how he approaches anything, and that's kind of why he is the BizDoc. It's not just a character he plays. That's who he is. Did any of that kind of rub off? I think absolutely. I think the difference though is that Pat is also very much like that. It's not as numbers backed or as pinpointed, but overall from a strategical standpoint, absolutely. He's super strategical in terms of what he does. He's very patient, and he's truly a grandmaster in the sense of thinking moves ahead and looking at things and looking at the big picture. So I think definitely I picked up way more from Patrick directly versus it being from Tom, but they both think the same way. I think it's just Tom is more pinpointed in terms of data and numbers versus Patrick has I wouldn't call it a gut intuition by any means, but it's an understanding of kind of where things are going. And Patrick also is really good with numbers. I've never met anyone who's as quick with math and numbers and this and that and kind of the understanding of how things connect. And I think that's where him and I got along very well, because it was a lot of sparring in terms of ideas or concepts. And the way I always looked at it was, and I told him this too, I was like, when I'm helping you create content, I am the knife that you sharpen. I'm the tool that you sharpen your knife on. I'm going to push back on everything you say, because that way you're gonna craft a better argument, or you're gonna see a different side of it in a very like respectful way of just, hey, I'm gonna push you, because that's how we get a better understanding. And like, I mean, he's all for debate, and him and I have had many extensive debates and all kinds of different topics. And like, I've always been trained or thought to like, okay, why am I wrong, right? Like let me argue the other point, right?
Yeah.
And doing that while also being extremely neutral, where it's like, I'm going to push you. I 100% agree with what you're saying, but I'm going to push you in every aspect to see if what you stand, like what you're saying stands merits, or if you can find a better way to be more persuasive or come up with a better argument.
Yeah. Awesome. Kai, where can people find you out? Where can we find the quiz funnels if they're interested? Where could they find you online?
Absolutely. I think the best way is Instagram. My Instagram is Kai Lode, so KAILODEE. So 2 E's at the end. That's where I'm putting out most of the content, and then I'll be putting out some YouTube stuff within the near future. But I'll be talking about that on the Instagram too. So that's the best place to check it out.
Awesome. So you guys could go find him there. Heidi will take your wife quiz funnel there.
Exactly. I look forward to it. That'll be good.
Yeah. Hey, I really appreciate your time, man. I'm gonna reach out. We'll talk a little bit more about the quiz funnels offline. But
absolutely.
But thank you. Thanks for sharing your story.
No, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You have a good one. All right.
Later, brother. Have a good day.
Take care.
Bye. All right. Kai Lode, everybody. We have the oh no, not that. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. Awesome show. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you guys really got something out of it. Like we talk about all the time, is like you want to be able to contribute into any space that you're at and show up. And I think there's a lot of really good stuff that Kai talked about in here that could easily be replicated to whatever you want to do. So go follow him, go check it out. What do we got? We got Greg Glassman on tomorrow. So we'll see you guys at 7 a.m. for that show. And thanks for hanging out. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I know it's very business relative to some of the other stuff, but guess what? That's where the show's going. I love that stuff. So we're just going to keep rocking in that direction. Thanks, guys. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for Olivia, Judy, Jonathan, what's up? Heidi, hopefully you get the quiz funnel there. We'll find out. Steven, great job. Thanks. Hope you guys enjoyed it. All right, y'all. Be good to each other out there. There it is. I'm going to make a quiz funnel. All right, Heidi. Peace out, guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.